Aquaba, welcome back. If you are just joining us, masked dancers is the topic of this episode, again emphasizing our connections to each other. The absolute thrill of masked dancers is universal. Whether the Bermudian Gumbays, Bahamian Junkanoo, the masqueraders of St. Kitts, or the various expressions of this African phenomenon that can be witnessed in Carnival celebrations in Trinidad, Tobago, Haiti, Cuba, St. Lucia, and numerous other Caribbean nations. But let us begin at the beginning. African people have created masks since the beginning of time. Masks were even depicted on rock paintings dated back over 11,000 years ago. Masks always had and continue to have a purpose and range in size from very small to life-size to gigantic. One of history's most famous African masks is the funerary mask of Kemet's King Tut. Made of gold and adorned with gemstones, it was placed atop his mummy, weighs 22.5 pounds, and still captures the imagination. Funerary masks are still worn by various African ethnic groups and function as ancestral presents. The use of masks run the gamut from funeral and secret society masks to rites of passage and harvest celebrations. They are ceremonial, spiritual, and not meant to represent the living. Mass dancing has its origins with a number of African ethnic groups and countries. Again, traditional African mask wearing is deeply rooted in ritual practices that are spiritual in nature. Needless to say, I am not talking about Halloween. Like the mask itself, masked dancers are summoned for harvest celebrations, funerals, weddings, social events, initiation practices, and in times of war and peace. Mask wearers symbolically put aside their human beingness to assume the spirit purpose of the mask, serving as a medium for communication between the people and the spirit embodied by the mask. In some societies, uttering the name of the mask wearer is forbidden, as the human personality has been subsumed by the spirit represented by the mask. Masked dancers are an important part of traditional, cultural, and ritual ceremonies throughout Africa, including Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, the Gambia, Cameroon, Mali, and Tanzania among them. Ethnic groups with a long history of masked rituals include the Ashanti, Ga, and Bambara people of Ghana, the Igbo and Yoruba of Nigeria, the Dogon of Mali, among others. This traditional and ancient African cultural ritual crossed the waters with enslaved Africans and has become part of the cultural traditions of various Caribbean countries, along with Bermuda. Despite egregious misinformation that improperly traces mass dancing to other parts of the globe, including European military rituals and ballroom dancing, one only need do a minimum amount of research to confirm the true origins of mass dancers. In this episode of Mwalimu Dropping the Knowledge, we will explore this cultural phenomenon, especially as commonalities are expressed. It manifests itself in the African diaspora. Whether Carnival, Gumbay, or Junkanoo, the recreation of our ancestral cultural practices was a powerful form of resistance to white supremacy and oppression. With minimal time to be one's authentic self, our enslaved ancestors intentionally embodied the spirit of our ancestors through the mask, dancing and drumming freely, allowing the burdens and griefs and pain of constant abuse temporarily fall away from their bodies, minds, and spirits. The Christmas and Boxing Day holidays were eagerly embraced with gusto for this time of momentary relief from the cruel drudgery of enslavement life. In a presentation for the Jamaican Ministry of Culture, Mrs. Arlene Ferguson Nash, a Bahamian historian, educator, and founder of the Educulture Junkanoo Museum in the Bahamas, states, and I quote, "Junkanoo is deeply rooted in resistance to slavery, defiance," end quote. Her statement is confirmed by the various efforts to end these cultural expressions by European colonists. In the Bahamas, the Prohibition Act of 1899 limited the times that Junkanoo enthusiasts could celebrate to 4 to 9 in the morning. In 1948, the government literally banned Junkanoo. It was 6 years before the ban was finally lifted. The prohibition to this specific cultural expression was not confined to the Bahamas. Originally called Canboulay in Trinidad and Tobago, the carnival celebration as a symbol of freedom and defiance became more pronounced after emancipation in 1838. As Canboulay expressions became louder, more colorful, and enthusiastic, it was met with outright hostility from the British colonial government, who outlawed public drumming, singing, stick fighting, and masquerading, as well as practicing any African-based spiritual traditions. Again, speaking to the constant thread of defiance and resistance, our ancestors did not allow the bans to stop them. In fact, bans on using sticks gave way to using biscuit tins, which ultimately led to the creation of steel pans. And as you all know, this is an instrument still in use today. The history of stigma, pushback, and hostility towards this African-based cultural expression not only was manifest through legislation, but also in the cultivation of a certain negative attitude imposed on the people. This particular cultural art form was deemed pagan and not considered legitimate, beautiful, or respectful as a distinctive cultural expression. One of the fears of the oppressors was that this uniquely cultural expression could initiate or disguise uprisings or other disturbances. In Jamaica, Junkanoo was portrayed as vulgar, debased, and frightening. Efforts to eliminate it were increased after what is called the Junkanoo riots of 1841, when the mayor of Kingston banned the parade, and a decline in people participating resulted in its near disappearance as a community celebration. In Trinidad and Tobago, Canboulay also asserts not only defiance, but a mockery of the enslavers when exaggerated costumes of the colonialists are worn and paraded about. We'll be right back.